Educate, entertain, enjoy.
You're listening to Aspen Waite Radio.
The waterways here were very much a part of the ancient transportation system, as you may be aware of the Grand Canal. It always amazes me that people talk about the Great Wall as being a great achievement, but in my opinion, an even greater achievement was the Grand Canal, which runs from just behind Shanghai all the way through to Tianjin, which is just shy of Beijing. And it's an incredible feat of engineering to have such a thing, and it's still navigable, and you can visit it in all sorts of different ways. But I just feel that's an interesting thing. And of course, the Yangtze itself in this part of the country, which is the central location, the Yangtze goes from here all the way down to the southwest of China, where its headquarters up down in Chongqing, just shy of Tibet and that region. And then there's the Pearl River, but basically transportation rather than entertainment.
Okay, so Rob goes to university. So what were you studying in those days?
Economics. That's what I started off there. Economics. I moved
Good man. All the best people do that.
I've forgotten more than I should have these days, I'm afraid. And I sort of went on a diverse track of education. I then did my master's at University of London in education leadership.
Okay.
I then moved on and did a doctorate at Columbia in New York.
Wow.
In EdTech, because as my life journey evolved, I felt I needed more knowledge in those areas. So I'm like that. I've now been in China 22 years, so I'm sort of the global citizen, I suppose.
Mm. Yeah, are you old enough to have come from the generation that had to sing "God Save the Queen"?
Yes, precisely. I don't know the Advanced Australia Fair, although I know there's a controversy about that from our First Nations people at home, who now quaintly call Australia Day Invasion Day. So I find all those things quite quaint, to be honest.
No, it's interesting. Obviously, as a big rugby man in myself, I remember the first time I watched England play Australia, and I wasn't convinced I was going to have the greatest time. I was sat next to 6 Australians about the same age as myself, maybe marginally older, and I thought, this will be fun. I wonder what it'll be like. And I have to say, I'm not saying this just because you're there. You couldn't have chosen 6 better, nicer, respectful people. One of the things, we started talking about all sorts of things, and they absolutely loved the pre-match stuff. So those of you that go to Twickenham will know that you get Laura what's-her-name doing lots of singing, and obviously get the band playing around and people singing Rule Britannia and and all that sort of thing, and they loved it. They were. What surprised me is when the anthem was played, they all stood up, and I'm like, this is not what I'm expecting from Australians. And they were saying, that actually, obviously, when they were at school, that's what they sang. So, it's interesting. And one of the things maybe we'll have a chance to talk about today, to get your take on this, because I've not had a chance to talk to an Australian about this, is it strikes me that the Anglo-Saxon world is getting closer, more integrated. Do you think that's true?
I believe that's true, but maybe it's generational too. Those things are sort of cyclic from my view of that, brought together by various other things rather than an hereditary cycle. The nature of trade and the nature of travel have allowed us to become very multicultural in many senses, but in some cases we sort of draw back to our roots again. But I've got to say that that rugby link of yours, it interests me a lot, because I can tell you I've had a couple of weird experiences in that time. I actually played for Queensland schoolboys against South African schoolboys as the curtain raiser to a South Africa-Australia test in 71, I think it was, just prior to the shutdown for apartheid. Mm-hmm. We played behind barbed wire at the Brisbane Exhibition Ground, of all places. It was an amazing event. But the Australian links with the Commonwealth have never really gone anywhere else except been what they've always been. Political movements being what they are. But at grassroots level, Australians still see themselves as being part of the Commonwealth, and in more ways than just sport.
Yeah, no, it's good. So I think that's a good time to take us up to Rob's first song. So one thing I can promise you, listeners, is we won't have a guest playing three more different songs. And I've actually listened to the first one. I went to the gym on Saturday, and then I sat in the hot tub and listened to the Jasmine Flower song. So I'm going to impress Rob with my knowledge now. So the Jasmine Flower song was written during the early days of the Qing dynasty, which is Q, which is K apparently in English. And this is actually the dynasty which took China from the early 1600s right through to the end of the monarchy, or whatever you want to call it, in 1912, when China became a republic. This is apparently the most famous song in China, Rob.
Yes, it was also the song that first astronauts played the first Chinese astronauts played as they circled the Earth. So I thought it was appropriate in this digital age to bring this out. And the words were added actually by a person from Jiangsu.
Fantastic. So yes, written in Jiangsu province, which is where Rob is joining us today. So go and have a little delight and listen to Jasmine Flower.
Aspen Waite Radio. Full weight.
I was just laughing, Rob, because obviously one of the things Drew quite often has to source, hundreds of records, and I just said to him, you managed to pick the shortest version of Jasmine Flower that I could certainly come across. So maybe on a show later in the week we can play an extended version with the singing as well. So have you become someone who loves China, would you say, in your 22 years of living in China, Rob?
To be honest, I look back at my time here. I think to some extent, yes. I look back at my time here, and the time has flown so quickly. I listened to your words of introduction there originally, just before the news, Paul, and I made the comment about what China is really like and how surprising it is. I can't tell you how surprising it was for me either when I first arrived here. I really thought I was coming into a land of pajamas and bicycles, and it's not what I found.
So what did you find?
I found an amazingly vibrant, welcoming and vibrant, effervescent place to be. I came here originally on a 3-month contract, and I'm still here. So I can tell you that's what it's like. It's an amazing ride for people who want to roll up their sleeves and get stuck into whatever their chosen field may be.
Would you say the Chinese were welcoming to Westerners, or is there a difference in attitude to Westerners, Asian people, or anything like that, or what?
Times have changed a lot. I've seen China grow so much, but it's never the heart of the Chinese people has never wavered as far as I've noticed. They're an incredibly welcoming and curious people, and that curiosity is quite often misunderstood for being invasive into character assessment. They're totally not that at all. They are very much a family-oriented people. And to survive here really is about no confrontation. Is a very simple rule for anyone thinking of coming to China. Everything is just can be solved as long as people are patient and respectful and go about your business.
So China's had a very interesting history, and of course had a particularly difficult relationship with Japan, shall we say. With whom it's, I think Japan has sort of basically been trying to invade China for several hundred years. Has that relationship got better now, or is there still a lot of, a bit like the sort of English and the Germans? Is it like that or not?
No, it's probably a little more serious than that.
Is it?
It's very much ongoing. You need to understand that I think from both the Taiwanese and Japanese position, a lot of their industry, and I think the figures are up over 70% now, are actually, their manufacturing strength is on the Chinese mainland. So the relationship between Japan and China in a practical sense is ongoing. At a political sense is something else. I'm no expert on politics, but I did have, just coincidentally, on the 1st of July was the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party in China, and it was basically built around protectionism against that Japanese invasion to the north of China, 100 years ago. So people often misunderstand China and its political pieces. I don't know a great deal about it, to be honest. I spent 15 years in senior Chinese government, but I never really came across that type of thing. It was really about how to improve the lot of the common people and move forward. So I'll let you ask me a question, but I do have something I'd like to make a comment about the relationship between industry and government.
Yeah, carry on then while it's in your mind.
Sure. The misunderstanding here is that what's it like to do business in China, and how heavily does government impact on that? I think the easiest way to understand it is in a simplistic economic sense, is that government looks after the public services. I think is probably the easiest way to understand it. And then business just goes on like it does in any other country. And as long as you follow the guidelines of how to do business, pay your taxes, don't become any sort of in any sort of criminal activity, and you just do your thing, then it's pretty much like doing business anywhere else. So obey the rules, listen to it, good advice. There's some cultural quirks, but business here is really like business anywhere else.
It's just going back a bit. I was thinking about it, my own experiences. So I've always been fascinated in other countries since I was a small boy, and I think in part that was fueled by a book that a lovely chap who lived next to my grandparents in a beautiful little village in West Somerset gave me a book when I was a small boy, and it was called Children of the World. And there was like Children of the Steppes, the Eskimo children. Something that stayed with me forever. One was Mongolian family, which I've been ridiculously fascinated in Mongolia ever since. But what as a result of that, and I just love pagodas and Confucianism and all that sort of thing. I ended up writing at the age of about 7 or 8, writing a project on Chiang Kai-shek. Who, don't be sort of political or anything. So this is just looking at it from a slightly, and of course one shouldn't forget that Chiang Kai-shek himself, did a lot to save China against Japan. So, him and Mao were actually fighting the same war, if you like. They were just fighting it from different standpoints. So I've always been really interested in him. I remember writing a letter to the Chinese embassy. And of course, there's that wonderful film with Ingrid Bergman in, where she's taking all these kids on a 100-mile walk. The famous song, isn't it? This old man, he plays whatever. I can't remember, I think it's A Long and Winding Road. It might be called. It's a film that used to be on a lot in England. Anyway, so what in your life before China, what were you mostly doing, Rob?
It's been an interesting pathway. I originally started off, I did a double degree at university, also hospitality management. Whoa. So I double graduated at the same time in 2 parallel universities. I was one of the first people to do that. And after doing appropriate apprenticeship in the hospitality and tourism industry, I built a company, and we basically went around in the South Pacific rescuing companies in trouble in tourism, hotels, airlines, shipping companies and so forth. So that was largely the brief that I came to China on originally, was in strategic management.
Oh, okay.
I came into the world of education through the back door, per se.
Okay. So you turned up on a 3-month contract, and then presumably that became a longer contract, did it?
Yes, I was then asked to stay. I obviously did a reasonably good job, and I was asked to stay. And my first platform was to lead the Department of Education's international relations team.
Wow.
To build a global network. So that was my early work, and I've since branched off to the enterprise section, basically because of a need from overseas organisations and Chinese organisations to have a buffer in between to allow interpreted dialogue to happen, so that companies can understand each other and government instruments from both sides. So I stand firmly in the middle.
That's what I think about it before we get on to your next song, which is As Long as Jasmine Flower Was Short. What would you say was the Chinese perception of England now, if you had to sum it up?
Very positive at the moment. The UK is the flavour of the year here in China at the moment. Their colleagues across the Pacific and the northern section in the US has gone through a well-documented troubled relationship or testy relationship, whether it be the US and Canada in another in a different circumstance with immigration issues, and Australia because of Australia's political position with China. And Brexit has created a need for the UK and China to get together closely and have a look at how that can emerge. So right now, totally great. The only inhibitor, of course, is travel. So I think when the travel restrictions come down, there's going to be a very fertile area of business.
Yeah, I have to say, as a renowned Brexiteer, or whatever the right word might be, I actually had my own website. In the pre-Brexit thing, I'm actually feeling quite smug at the moment, to be honest. And of course, even I was talking to a friend yesterday. Even the football team's current successes are very helpful to the general feeling of well-being. And of course, you've got I don't know if this story's been reported at all in China. The UK's had maybe the most successful rollout vaccination program in the world. Against the EU's typically bureaucratic, cumbersome, extremely slow, politically dominated rollout. So I think it's made a lot of people, not just British people, really focus on on the realities of federalism, shall we say?
I think you're right. I think the key to the rollout, from my point of view, is about public perception of doing the right thing. I think it's up to the individual to recognise they're a piece of a bigger puzzle, and roll up is to be part of it for the nation.
Yeah. So So as someone, So I was. So yeah. I actually have a disproportionate affection for Australia, Canada, New Zealand, because my father brought me up like that. So my father was a massive believer in the Commonwealth. So probably the 4 countries, funnily enough, that I was brought up to love would be Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Norway. Norway because of as you probably can tell, of the Viking influence in the Waite family. And I think the Norwegians are just generally great people. So I remember as quite a young child when Britain joined the common market, my father and I are having this very serious conversation, because I was a very earnest 11-year-old boy, about my feeling that our Australian cousins had been betrayed by the British government to some extent, and I very much sort of have carried that with me all my life to some extent, and I actually think that Britain's very fortunate that that a lot of the Commonwealth countries haven't sort of gone UDI, to be honest. Having said that, we've gone through things, and maybe sometimes, like you say, I think that's very wise what you said earlier about cycles. So I think I feel very excited at the moment, because I feel actually, why would you rather do business with a company in Toulouse and not in Nanjing? Or why would you prefer to be in Frankfurt and not Madras or whatever, Chennai? So I think, no, I think it's going to be really good. And of course, when we come back after your next track, we can talk about, what you're doing and obviously what I hope Aspen Waite will be doing, working in partnership with you as well. So next we have great song from the Rolling Stones. I loved your notes where you said most people of your age had a copy of this or whatever. That was so. Is this a song that means a lot to you?
Means a lot to me. Australians of my generation were divided. You were either a Beatles person or a Stones person. Yeah. I was obviously of this side, but I must admit I've mellowed.
So the song says you can't always get what you want, but I'm not sure that's true. So with hard work you can do anything. So take it away, Drew.
Full weight.
That was the Rolling Stones. So that's Rob's second track. So I suppose in the 20-odd minutes or so we got left, Rob, we ought to tell these great people all about what Academy are doing and et cetera, et cetera. So how did, was Academy formed by you or did it already exist before you came into it?
No, it was formed by me in partnership with some other like-minded people. When I finally decided that I'd had enough of treading the halls of government, I decided I wanted to stay in China and I wanted to do some of the things that I, in a slightly different way that I want than what government wanted me to do with transnational work. And so we formulated a academy originally to partner in education, and as I mentioned earlier, we then moved on into enterprise to allow us to do that. So I still maintain a very close connection with government. And as a matter of fact, last week we had our big annual event called Nanjing Tech Week. It's actually a combination of two things, where we provide the international engine for that very large event. I think it was I haven't got the figures for this year yet, but in 2020, I think 200 million people participated in some form or other. So we have that sort of access, and that's our competitive edge when we work with, for example, clients from Aspen Waite, looking to work with China on different levels and different projects. So we're like a full service brokerage here, I suppose, is an easy way to summarize that.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Nanjing Tech Week. So I suppose we ought to join in the dots a bit later. But as Rob mentioned it, I think we had 4 Aspen Waite clients represented at the Tech Week, probably notably Crystalline and the Thermal Compaction Group.
Yes, there were a couple of others, and a couple came through channels through Aspen Waite, which were built out of the other sections that Oksana is looking after them very well there. Actually, we're very encouraged by the channel, to be honest. The problem with dealing with China, I think, for many businesses, they don't really know where to go. They get on Google or they find some sort of spurious third party knocking on doors, trying to hold their hands down the merry path. Whereas in actual fact, here is if you don't fit the profile of what is required by government policy for the country, then you're really banging your head against a brick wall. So there's really some early positive steps that can be taken to give companies the opportunity to have a clear assessment of what the viability is of working with China. Go ahead.
Yeah. So how long has Academy been in existence now?
6 years. This is our.
And you're presumably a part owner.
Yep, for sure. On where the buck stops.
Yeah. So are you now a Chinese citizen, or are you still an Australian citizen?
No, I'm not.
Why is that funny?
Yeah, well, it is actually, because I get asked that a lot. I'm neither a Chinese citizen nor am I a party member. I do have permanent residency here, so I have a green card. I was invited by the government to take up that opportunity, which basically means I can transverse the borders freely without a visa. But I know you can take the Australian out of Australia, but you can't get the Aussie out of the guy. So I'll always be that. I think really, Paul, the key thing from our point of view is that we started off almost as a semi-benevolent organisation, basically holding the hands of people trying to do something here, and finding their way frustrated, and then it's turned into a business. That's really how it's evolved, and so we're still very much of that mindset. So we have a very personal, caring level, and I've got a very good team of people that work with me here, who do that. I'm the only expatriate. The rest are all Chinese, and they're very good at their work, and they have a caring responsibility to the people that they serve, and that's how we get by.
Yeah, I have to say, from my limited experience of working with you and your colleagues, words like respectful. So we just for those of you, so Aspen Waite and Academy signed a sort of a partnership agreement, which was shown on YouTube live at the time. And one of the things that struck me was how respectful and, I'm trying to think, decent, lovely would be a word. I always had sweet, but there's take this the right way. Some of your colleagues, there's almost like a childish, but in a nice way. Do you know what I mean? A rather refreshing, like some people. I've got a couple of friends like this. They can't lie, and I just think there's something rather lovely and very different about that. The thing that I was absolutely amazed at was when you and I and your colleagues had our first real conversation of me being me, as opposed to me being the chairman or something, or just acquiescing to something, was how much we had in common. So if you said to me, I would say that I was probably, you wouldn't find anybody in the world more passionate about wealth creation than me. But what's interesting, and I think actually, despite what people might think, that is also true of China. But I think where the real link comes in is I have, compared to most people, certainly in my status, I'm a passionate believer in the community and things like the rich look after the poor and the strong look after the weak and all that sort of thing. And so I found that when I started opening up to you and saying this is what Paul believes in, it was like hallelujah. We're having like a hallelujah fest, because it was seemingly very shared values. So that was a bit of a delight, to be honest with you, Rob.
Thank you very much for those kind words. From our perspective, we mirror that. But for us, the type of work we're in is very much like docking a couple of spacecrafts together, around the world somewhere, because there's so much complexity and technology that goes into creating the vehicles. But to put them together is really a gentle piece of synergy that needs to be done in that manner. So for us to try to cram information down a pipeline without that platform being built correctly at the beginning doesn't work for us, and it certainly doesn't work here, because here it's very complex. So it's tough and it's very hard work, but it doesn't mean it can't be done in a harmonious manner, and that's the key to China, to be honest.
Yeah, I suppose we ought to say at this point that I'm now talking on a personal level as Paul Waite, not necessarily as the chief executive of Aspen Waite. I guess Aspen Waite got into China really off the back of education, a bit like how Academy started. in terms of what my real aspiration is, I may be many things, but I can see an opportunity, and as I said earlier, I'm genuinely excited by other countries. I'm very multicultural, very liberal, etc. And I really want Aspen Waite, and now through its partnership with Academy, to be the logical place that British people come to if they want to do trade in China, and Chinese business would come to us for the UK, and that's always been my ambition. And I think slowly but surely we're getting somewhere.
I feel as China modernizes that the understanding of the Chinese industry sector is a lot more professional than it used to be. The Wild West days are well and truly gone. And I'll just make a couple of points for you there, Paul. People often ask me about IP and patent protection and so forth in China. I don't think we can have this conversation publicly without mentioning that. And I would hope that people would understand that, China, in the size of what you described in your preamble, was, it's an immense country. It's a market to itself.
Yeah.
So the Chinese government works incredibly hard to protect the IP of its own people within China. It's as big a battle as it is for what, foreign people look at China and saying China trying to steal IP. So it's a shared problem with shared solutions. So a lot has been done in recent years to tidy that up. I won't say it's completely solved, but it's certainly incredibly much better than it was even as recent as 5 years ago. The Xi Jinping government has done an amazing piece of work here by really cutting through some of the dead wood. Previous administrations positioned it, and he's just come in and really, put some steel into the whole public service system. It's amazing, totally different. At the time I was in that system, and I can tell you it was like a change overnight. So it's a safe bet these days of doing business. You would have as good a chance as doing something well in China as you would anywhere else on the planet, I believe.
Yeah, I'd say certainly in my experience and my network, I think people are on the whole cagey, cynical about. If I was to turn around to say to most clients, I think you should go and talk to Rob, about China or whatever, I think they'd be sitting there, looking at me like I had two heads or something. So obviously, one of the things Aspen Waite Radio stands for is educate. So hopefully, you and I can be pioneers. I think that's a good thing to be. One of the things I'm trying to do is, which again would be probably quite unusual for somebody in my position, is I'm all about legacy. Legacy, not. Most people would sit around and say, I've got an exit strategy and I'm gonna realise 17 squillion million pounds at some point. Whereas, I'm not really interested in that. I'm more interested in even if you and I could help 10 people to do great business in China, which they wouldn't have done without us, then for me that's a job well done.
Yeah, well, I concur with that. I think that's a very low bar, to be honest. I think we can raise that bar substantially because there's some simple rules about being here. If you want to do something well with China, you want to be able to give as much as you take out. That's not a ledger entry. That's purely a philosophical way to approach China. If you can bring something here and you can take a lot out, and you'll find the Chinese are very much happy with that.
Right, so time has sailed by. We've got about 8 minutes to go. We're going to play Rob's final song before we wrap up. Rob, so I don't know if you know about the Isle of Man connection with the Bee Gees. So I don't think I told you this. So my father comes from the Isle of Man. So
Okay.
So I rather liked you picking this because the Bee Gees are sort of Australian Manxmen, I guess.
Yep.
And of course, you've done a really good link up with your own with your own home. Well, now your current hometown in the Gold Coast, the region. So Rob tells me that the Bee Gees' first performance was at the now defunct Queensland Club in Gold Coast.
Yep, that's true. That was their first paid working gig.
This was number one hit in Australia, was it? Sorry, this was the number one hit in Australia before. Well, they.
Yeah, well, in actual fact, it hit number one while they were on the boat back to England. So
cool.
they didn't know about it until they got back to Blighty.
So this is Spicks and Specks from the Bee Gees.
This is Full Weight on Aspen Weight Radio.
That was the Spicks and the Specks from the Bee Gees. And we've got 4 minutes left with our wonderful guest today, Rob. Thank you for being so intelligent and effusive. Just in the 4 minutes we've got left to do a party political broadcast on behalf of the Academy and Aspen Weight. So Rob very kindly referred to Oksana earlier. So those of you who are regular listeners will know that Dr. Oksana Artyomenko was a guest of mine 4 weeks ago, I think it was, 4 or 5 weeks ago. So Oksana is originally from Odessa in the Ukraine, which is quite ironic given the footy match on Saturday. And as well as being one of the world's leading cardiologists, she's now very much interested in finance and all things international, particularly innovation in the medical space. And I'm very proud that Oksana now heads up Aspen Weight's foray into China. And Oksana's built hopefully a really good relationship with you, Rob.
She's doing a great job. Proactive, professional. We all love her out here.
So how much did that cost you, Oksana, eh? Get the bottle of whiskey down to Paul down in the post and I'll forgive you. So... No, it's good. It's always good to deal with. I remember actually when I first met Oksana that the thing that struck me was her intelligence actually, and I think what's quite nice sometimes, you meet somebody and then a bit like today to some extent, you see it's like seeing the outside of the chocolate wrapper, but you don't get to bite inside and see what's really in there. And Oksana's got an amazing amount of humanity to go with the intellect, I would say.
Yeah, she's doing a great job, and she's personable with the clients as well. So that suits our modus operandi as well. So we are enjoying working with her and looking forward to building on that.
So for those of you out there who are interested in business, interested in new markets, and of course you should be. If you're not, you should be. Business is all about adaptation and evolution, and always never looking to stand still. So one of the things I always say is what's good enough yesterday isn't good enough today. What's good enough today isn't good enough tomorrow. So you're very fortunate to be working with experts in us and Academy with Rob. So for those of you listening who would like to even learn more or would like to do business in China but don't quite know how to go about it, then make sure you contact us. We're quite happy to put anybody listening today directly in touch with Rob, maybe talking to Oksana first, and hopefully we can all play our small part in building our future, Rob.
Yes, well, welcome to all of that. And Paul, thank you very much for the opportunity of chatting again with you. It's been a pleasure as always. We look forward to helping your people to land here of those who are interested to do so.
So what's the future hold for Academy in the last minute?
Well, we've just opened a new Nanjing UK Innovation and Development Centre here. It's a national project funded nationally. So that's us for the moment. We've now got a very high tech landing zone for companies that want to look coming this way, and we're developing in that area too. So we're excited by that. We're busy, but always time for a chat. Good.
So yes, again, just final pontificate from Paul today. So one of the things, again, I talk about a lot about succeeding in business is it takes no small amount of courage. And one thing I can say is, there's a certain amount of apprehension and fear regarding the Chinese market, but you don't need to, because my experience is you're dealing with warm, lovely, empathic, decent people who just want to be respected back. So look forward to having you back again, Rob. Thank you ever so much for all your contributions today. And pass on our very best to your colleagues too. Thanks for your music choices. And over to the news. Look forward to talking to you tomorrow.
Online, on DAB, and on the Aspen Waite Radio app. This is Aspen Waite Radio News.